I think potentially could be that 14 with a 6-8 split. Now that retains the split aspect, because I think, as the guys have mentioned there, I think the split does bring a level of excitement.
I was confused by the split when I first came up. I was like, what's this? Like, why is the league split? And it doesn't make any sense to me, but I think it's brilliant.
Is this just, it's not like the Scottish media to get ahead of themselves, but
you're part of that now.
It's your fault, Naisy.
Be honest, now that you're in the position you're in at St Mirren, have you ever fixed any of the electrics?
So if you see me with a harness on up the floodlights,
Welcome to the warm-up, brought to you by William Hill, a proper supporter of the SPFL, another packed show, and we are driven by Stephen Naismith, former footballer, manager, now baker, and Elsher.
it's the same every week with you, man. I'm in a great mood
skill.
as well because the weather's good and that as well. So
Back out in the golf course,
correct,
cycling, outdoors, just
loving life.
Honestly, and by the way, what a standard of guests. Seriously, do you know what? I'm interested in this dynamic because did you know, Marvin Bartley, that Keith Lasley's nickname when he was at Motherwell was the housewife's favourite? And I know that that's now the role that you sort of see yourself in.
I like that role. That's a fantastic role.
Science food before we come on.
I feel like that's what you need to aspire
on the baton here
to be. Are you okay with that? You comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'll be taking some notes and speaking to him after.
Not intimidated?
Nah, never.
Because I was trying to think about the careers overlapping, but I'm thinking Keith probably just about retired as you, maybe came into the top flight.
I don't know, I was 2017, I think.
Oh no,
Aye,
still been
couple
around.
of seasons maybe.
I would have kicked you like a kick Naisy, yeah, definitely.
I was going to say, who'd get the most bookings in a season out of you two? That would be a close one
Marv.
thing. I'm not sure.
Well, apparently I'm fourth in the list. My son likes to remind me of these things. Not for any goals or good stuff like that. He said he must be on Google, but I apparently fourth in the all-time SPFL Premiership list, which
For bookings.
is a small part of me it's really proud of.
Decent, by the way.
We'll need to dig out the top three. But anyway, we good to go. Get stuck in. Been another busy week. Have to admit the timing of league reconstruction talks was good because it was before midday on the 1st of April. Maybe people thought there was a bit of a joke. And Keith, you've been involved in your role as COO at St Mirren. You're on the group that talks about these things.
Yeah, on the competitions working group at the SPFL. And I think it's probably important to say that meeting's not due to take place till the end of this month, where these proposals that have obviously I know they're out there, if you like, in terms in the public domain now through the newspaper piece. But I think, there's we'll maybe get into this, but I think there's a bit to go in terms of discussion and people's opinion, and that's obviously coming from different areas of the league and people's priorities and things like that. But I'll be part of that discussion at the end of this month. And listen, from a personal point of view, I always think it's good to have discussions in terms of what might take the game forward on all levels, and looking forward to getting more detail in each of the proposals that are getting put forward.
Because obviously the headline grabber has been this notion that we might return to a 10-team top flight. So you're telling us that's not. It's not as if that's definitely happening. There are other options there. What are the other options? What does this process look like now?
Well, I think the other option, that is a option in terms of the 10 team. I think there's from the SPFL board, I think there's going to be 3 or 4 options presented to the competitions working group to debate, and I think that's both with less teams, like the 10-team proposal, and then a couple of options with more teams.
So
I
like
think that's going to be 14, 16, etc. And obviously what comes beneath that, because that's the thing. I think the Premiership obviously takes precedence in terms of the media, maybe in terms of what's happening with that. But there's obviously, we need to consider what lies underneath that and the implications for the other league set up beneath. So, but as I said, that's not been discussed in great detail. There's no proposal that's been discussed to a level that will then subsequently be recommended back to the SPFL board for consideration. So I think there's a lot of, a long way to go. And you add into the mix, I think it's well documented in terms of the governance structure that exists, that it's quite hard, particularly with a subject this big, to make any meaningful progress. But something I'm looking forward to, a conversation I'm looking forward to in more detail, and certainly from our point of view at St Mirren, we've got our own feelings in terms of what we think that should.
Is this
that should
just?
look like.
It's not like the Scottish media to get ahead of themselves, but
You're part of that now.
It's your fault, Naisy.
But is this more general process chat and these things come up, are the normal things that do come up in these meetings, rather than we are now changing it, we need change? Because we've got an entertaining league.
Yeah, no, we have, and we can maybe speak about that for our different experiences probably in the current setup and maybe before that. But no, I think it is a serious proposal in the sense that it is something that's been actively requested, and the clubs are interested in looking at it and speaking at it in more detail. So I think it is, serious in the sense of that it's not just let's have a chat and it's that's a relaxed fashion. I think there's some serious issues that need to be addressed. The financial distribution of the from top to bottom through the divisions, even within the SPFL itself, Premiership. So there are some serious matters there that need consideration, and it's bodies like the competitions working group. It's essentially the job of that working group to continually review the key issues in Scottish football from a competitions perspective, and obviously Reconstruction's a big part of that. So no, it's a serious conversation that will take place, and it's just, as I said, it's just difficult within the current governance structures to ultimately come out with anything really that's going to be really move the dial. But there's certainly a will to have that serious discussion.
What have you made of it all? Because like we kind of joked about, you maybe came up here about 10 years ago, probably didn't really know what the split was, but now you see it in all its glory. What have you made of the talks this week?
Oh, you're right. I was confused by the split when I first came up. I was like, what's this? Like, why is the league splitting? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I think it's brilliant. I really, really do. I've been involved as a player and as assistant manager. But even watching now, like as a supporter, I think it's fantastic. I don't think it needs to be changed. I think there's probably a lot in Scottish football that does need changing, but I don't think, we've got enough good teams, without being disrespectful, to go to a 16-team league. I don't think there's any benefit in terms of quality that we'll get to see. I don't think the product improves by doing that. The one thing that probably confused me has been the playoff structure, which again, the team that finished in 11th place gets that massive bonus of not having to play until the final. I think they should just go in with the other three teams. There should be a semi-final and a final, maybe at a neutral venue. So that sort of thing, I think, definitely something that we should look at. But in terms of making the league smaller, I'll be dead against that, if I'm honest.
When the split came in, I think that like everything, people have always got a thing to say about it. I remember it was always, how can the team in 7th have 56 points or whatever? And that was it. But the entertainment value it's brought is brilliant. But as players, the dynamic of getting in, first of all, either winning the league, not the European spots, getting in the top 6, then in the bottom 6, the pressure that builds towards the end of a season is massive. That it's so much better than it used to be, I think.
100%.
We're going to actually look at the current top 6 and who's going to make it and so on. So maybe get your thoughts on the split, specific thoughts on the split at that point. But generally then, Keith, how hard is it going to be to find that sweet spot? Because if we're saying that the split actually has its its positives and brings a bit of entertainment and competition, people want to get an environment where young players can maybe get the chance and flourish. You obviously want to listen to fans who maybe have their own thoughts on it. Financial redistribution that you mentioned. How would you find the sweet spot and all of
that? Difficult. To be honest, that's the short answer. I think history shows us that. Just to try and hit every one of those needs. There's a number of games. I think teams towards the top, the ones that are maybe in group stage consistently of Europa League and Champions League, will be advocating for less domestic games because the pressure in the expanded European calendar now is adding pressure there. But you're right, there is different constituencies even within the Premiership itself of priorities, and you always it's my job to represent some football clubs. So everybody that's at that table is going to see it through their own prism, if you like, first and foremost. But having said that, it's also our jobs to look at the greater good and look at the game as a whole. And again, as somebody that it's one of the leaders in a fan-owned football club, it's very important that we listen to the fans as well, and but our own fans and fans in general of the game, which I think if you'd done a straw poll at any point would advocate for more teams roll over less, for instance, using that as one of the kind of key aspects. So certainly we feel as if that would certainly be the case from our perspective at St Mirren. And as I said, in principle, that's how we will be approaching the talks.
So more, you'd favour a bigger league, basically.
If there were to be a change at all, it would certainly be for more teams in the top division than less. I'd put it that way. But again, I'm reticent to really add too much more detail until we get into that forum and see the specific detail and have discussions back and forth.
How possible is it? You think that it stays? Because you've all just said that you like the split. we'll get onto your specific crowd numbers as well a bit later on, but I think as a league it's very healthy. Everybody knows that. You look at the stat that always gets wheeled out about per capita across Europe and so on. So are we in a kind of crisis place where it has to change, or?
No, I don't think. I mean, my honest opinion is that I think it's likely not to change, in any time, immediately. I think because I think there is complexity in finding something that satisfies suits everybody. And I think that's just a consequence of where we find ourselves, and everybody, as I say, is in terms of maybe everybody coming to the table with their list of priorities, what they want to get from it. It's just going to be difficult, I think, to find something that's better than the status quo, if you like. But I think, we need to look at it. It needs a serious change. And as I said, I think there is the one option that's on the table that I think, and again, without going into too much detail, I think potentially could be that 14 with a 6-8 split. Now that retains the split aspect, because I think, as the guys have mentioned there, I think the split does bring a level of excitement and a level of competitive nature of the league all the way pretty much to the end, really. But it also satisfies less games for that top cohort of clubs, and that's 6, because they would have 2 games less, and then the bottom 8 would then have a couple more games from the status quo. So there's really, I look at that proposal in general, and again, it's not been looked in any detail, but certainly that's the one that I feel at least's got a chance of maybe progressing through a proper discussion. But listen, as I say, I'm saying that without having looked at the other
frustrations.
Detail.
Definitely it's the structure of Scottish football, and you've summed it up great there about every club has got their own agenda. Not in a negative, that's just where they're driving from.
Kind of inevitable as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but if we want, we want more young Scottish players to be internationals? Do we want a bigger league or more competitive or whatever, or the chance for the Lowland League teams and the Highland League teams to get all the way through the pyramid? To suit all their needs is near on impossible. Yeah. I think it's going to take something special for everybody to put that to one side and go, right, here's our main things that we want to improve on.
But how do you the way it's playing out, obviously it has, the stories out there publicly. You've alluded to the fact that St Mirren wouldn't favour a 10-team top flight. St Johnstone publicly said they wouldn't. So if my arithmetic is correct, that's kind of it almost.
well, you said that, not me, God.
So no need for the meeting now.
So yeah, I mean, it's got the 10-team bit has grabbed the headline. It's got everybody debating. Correct me if I'm wrong. That just now seems like very, very unlikely. Would that be fair?
I think it's fair to say it would be difficult. Yeah, I think so. Again, we need to go through it in detail and see exactly what that looks like. But I think at this stage, to me, in my personal experience, and I know coming from our point of view, I think that's going to be difficult to achieve. I do. So we just need to, as I say, look at the proposals that are going to be on the table, look at them in more detail and see. But I just, given a discussion even here, and for the reasons what we've spoken about, I think it would be very difficult to see a smaller top division.
You're not old enough to have played 10-team top flight, are you?
Do you know? I don't know.
No.
I'm not sure. I might have.
No,
when was this split? Was it before us?
Aye, 10-team.
I can't believe
I was 19. That was How old do you think we are? Honestly. One other point I would make, and I think it comes back to Daisy's point there, in the sense that I think we need to remember underneath as well, in terms of the other leagues that are feeding into the Premier Division. And actually, if I look at the Championship as well, from a player development point of view, it'd be interesting to hear Marvin's thoughts on it as well, just having managed in the leagues as well. From a player development point, from a Premier League club point of view, I think this was cited in the recent SFA transition report, was I think an expanded Championship would really help, and Premier League, but to be honest, but in terms of how I think about the Championship League, of a place where more clubs can develop more players, and whether that's their own players, but as well as maybe some of the best youngsters in Scotland as well that are maybe from the Scottish Premiership as well. So I think there's loads of different elements to this. It's not all about money. I think there's player development pieces here that I think need to be,
and coach development
and coach development and cooperation agreements coming in and things like that. And I think there's the size and shape of those leagues underneath are going to be important for, as I think we all agree that player development and having more good young Scottish players is something that should also be a key consideration.
Will that be, though, a valuable aspect of these talks for each club, that having a period where young players can be put in, or a young coach gets a bit more time to build what they want, is that really seen as a big thing we need to look at and make better?
I think we need to start treating it more
I
importantly.
agree, yeah.
I don't think it does, to be absolutely brutal about it. I don't think it probably does, or it has done to this point, because I think, you know, finance just takes over most of the conversations at whatever forum you're at, and you know, I suppose understandably so in many cases, just because, you know, different clubs, you know, just how important it is, obviously, the function of the, you know, a club, whatever size you are, to be honest with you. But I think that's why that specific report about player development, I thought was pretty good, because it did reference, you know, size in the leagues and maybe some of our competitors in Europe and how they do it, and you know, say maybe the different sizes and how they do have their league structure and things, and cooperation agreements and links between clubs and things like that. So I think when we're thinking and talking about structures, I think that has to become more of an issue. I think it's fair to say to this point, I don't think it's been in the conversation enough.
Do you think that's hard though? I think that's hard because, in fairness, if you can talk about pounds and pence and number of games, and that's the real tangible things that you know, people can see. You can see it written down, and you say, well, this is what's on offer. Player development, you guys will know more than me, it's a bit more fluid. You know, there's what does success really look like? How many factors can then derail that or accelerate that? So it to me, although it's a shame, it's inevitable that bit is a bit more difficult to really, you know, nail down, because people will have their theories on what X size of league does for player development, but again, does anybody really know, like, for sure?
Yeah, I think if you can have a 20-team league, I don't think it make much difference, because as Keith's talking about that, it's all about the finances. So you can go into a team and say, I want to play all these young players, and then your chairman's saying to you, well, we want to finish in a certain position. So to give you the best chance of doing that, without being disrespectful, it's going to be playing your best players, and that might not sometimes be the young players.
What about if there's less pressure, though, if that's what they say?
There's never less pressure, though, because there's fan pressure. There's never less pressure. So football's changed a lot now. Social media, again, a massive thing. Owners will go on there and see what people are saying. So, for example, Naismith manager of a team in the Premier League, plays all these young players, don't finish as high as they potentially could have if they had more experienced players. The fans are on his back. They don't care how many young players have played. They're like, well, we're not winning games of football. Our rivals have finished higher than us. So, you know, it's one of those things that I don't think changes. Young players just have to be good enough to play. Lennon Miller, example that we always use at Motherwell. He's playing at Motherwell because he's good enough to play.
They're calling him the new Keith Lasley, I think.
That's a worry. I don't think it's a better move than that.
Get his bookings up.
See, when you're talking about that there, right? But the bigger picture thinking, right? You're talking about the finances and that dictates. What is the best thing that's going to make you money in football is producing players and selling them. Look at how Celtic have done it. Look at Nathan Patterson leaving for Rangers for the amount he did. Craig Gordon going for £9 million. But it takes the core group of everybody standing together and going, right, how do we make it better? The product, the investment, the structure of the business. That's the bit I think we need to get better at.
That's individual clubs though, isn't it, Naisy? Like that will allow you to do that. Because if I'm the owner of a club and I say, right, Naisy, I want you to come in, play these younger players, potentially, can we get the next Nathan Patterson or whatever, sell him on, then perfect. But then Keith's in charge of another club and says the same thing to you, but you don't get the results straight away. You're out the door.
Yeah.
So, do you know, the next time you go into a job and someone says exactly the same thing to you, you're like, hang on a minute. Last time I lost my job trying to do what you wanted me to do, I'm just going to go out to win games of football. It's a very selfish industry. So unless it's a set rule that you have to have a certain amount of under-21s within your squad, I don't think it changes regardless if there's 10 teams in a league or there's 20 teams in a league. There's always going to be a financial pressure on it.
You've got a magic wand. You get to decide what does the ideal dream setup look like?
Gordon, come on. No, listen, where I'll try and diplomatically put this is definitely, if there's any proposal, it would be more than less. And as I said to you before, I think for me, out of the kind of brief look and sort of soundings of what is there to discuss, I think the 14 with retaining a split, I think to me is probably the one that's got the best chance of, further discussion, and the one that's got the best chance, as I say, of hitting everybody's or most people's needs in the setup that would have a chance of moving forward.
Again, there's probably a different discussion about the rights or wrongs or the whys, but just so people are clear, we do this notion that the 4 Old Firm games, are quite key to any kind of broadcast deals and stuff. So that remains. That's not going to be.
Well, no, listen, I think without asking Sky that question directly, I'm pretty sure yes is the answer to that. That will be the broadcast broadcast deal, runs till 2029. You know, I think Sky's view on it is going to be an important one. I think in terms of you know, moving forward. I think for Scottish football though, I don't think we can just be held just to a broadcast deal to what is the future of Scottish football. You know, I think there's got to be a discussion here between the clubs that is looking at the greater good overall from 29 and beyond. You know, I think that's got to be at the core of the discussion.
Can you pass the magic wand on to Marv? What would you change? Out of interest?
Honestly, nothing. I would leave it at 12.
No, but for the greater good of Scottish football,
I'll probably have a rule that a certain amount of under 21 players have to be involved in match day squads.
I think it's more minutes. I think if a
Minutes
club
they get
has
on
to
the
play,
pitch.
or from
We
a
had
club's
it
point of
before.
view,
We had it before,
the
and it became
23
token.
exactly. You have 3 players on the bench, but they'll miss out in their realistic games that they're going to play in because they need to be in the matchday squads.
Yeah.
I think more. What if you went and said, right, so every year, every team in the Premier League need to give academy players 1,000 minutes over a course of a season? I think that's realistic and could be done. You can pick and choose when you're up. You're up 5-0 at the weekend. You could put players on.
Doesn't get that position too often, surely.
No, but when you do,
Ideal. What a nice position to be in. We'll
is
maybe get
is
to
that realistic?
That's a hard one, isn't it? I think to do that would be difficult. I do. I think it's easy for the teams at the top, but those teams towards the bottom of it. Listen, imagine you get to your last 3 games and you're thinking, we've not hit our minutes, and we've got 3 massive games coming up post-split. You could end up getting yourself into a relegation battle, potentially relegated by playing players that aren't good enough to actually get on the pitch at this moment in time. And then you have to get them their minutes, and then teams just have to start taking a financial hit as well.
See, in a general sense, what's it like? Going to put the spotlight on you personally a bit. You've gone from kicking these guys to being involved in these types of decisions pretty quickly. You know, going from footballer to, you know, helping run a club and taking part. What's it been like, that transition?
I think if you look at the colour of my hair, that gives you an idea, Gordon. No, listen, it's just different. It's a different. I think maybe because I was at the one football club for a long time in Motherwell, I kind of got to know, particularly towards the end of my career, you know, I started to form relationships with the likes of Alan Burrows and people that were in positions that you start to get a feel for the club, not just what's happening on the pitch, but you start to then, you know, I feel, well, then I moved into coaching and assistant manager, and then that takes you to another level. You start to hear about budgets and bits and pieces like that. And as somebody who was just there, you know, a lot for a long time, maybe too long, some fans' perspective. But no, it gave me a feel for that. So when I finished, you know, on the football side of it in terms of education, I mean, you know, got up to my pro license, finished all that, and to be honest, I thought football management was where my next destination was going to be, and I was kind of trying to plan for that as much as you can in football. But then, you know, I finished my pro license. I was 33, something like that. And I thought, right, well, what next? And that's when I went and done a master's down in Manchester in sport and directorship. And that really then opened my eyes to oh, right, okay, you know, maybe my skill set can go into a different role. And once I got into that course and you know, then I related it back to my experiences at Motherwell, I thought, maybe this is, you know, maybe this is a route and something I think I can actually add value in to a club. And you know, and then it kind of went from there, and then the opportunity to sit there and come up. I think it'll be 3 years now in the summer, and that was obviously still a big wrench at the time to leave Motherwell, a club of obviously a big affiliation with, but it was the opportunity. You know, it was the opportunity to come. There's no many about. There's only so many clubs and so many opportunities at this level. And still being relatively young, certainly in this role, maybe not as a player or whatever, but in this role, still relatively young and hungry and you know, want to go and make a mark in the game in a different capacity. It's a great opportunity for me to do that now.
How did the coaching and the management, you thought that was going to be the route? Did it just naturally fade away when you went more business side?
Listen, you know as well, you know, opportunity is the big thing as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's all right having the plan, right? I want you to do this, that, and the other, but it's like you need that opportunity in football. You can only plan so much yourself and your personal development. It's like, and there was a couple of times maybe at Motherwell where I did maybe think that management opportunity was there, but for whatever reason, it never quite worked out. And in the background, I'm always somebody. You missed out qualified electrician, by the way.
Oh, that was my next question.
You're going to come back to that.
I need this
Because Marvin,
Hold on to get my carpet.
because Marvin wouldn't have known that, and I was looking forward to saying, be honest, now that you're in the position you're in at St Mirren, have you ever fixed any of the electrics?
So if you see me with a harness on up the floodlights at the Smizer Stadium, you know what
There you go. Did you know that? No. Spark by trade.
But the kind of half serious reason why I bring that up is it's always given me a grounding of what a real job looks like, if that, and feels like, if you like. So it's given me a determination to stay in football. I think anybody that works in football and has been in football in any capacity, don't get me wrong, it has its moments, as we all know, ups and downs and everything in between. But it is a privilege, it is a great industry, and I just wanted to make sure I give myself every opportunity to stay in it, essentially.
Be honest, if you've got a contractor in at the Smiza Stadium, are you over the shoulder? 100%. You having a wee
that red wire goes into that.
Imagine that kind of nightmare, wouldn't it? You don't get that.
It's a worry. It's a worry.
Do you know what I'm thinking? Even on this show, so David Marshall, we've had Aidan McGeady, Stephen Presley, Andrew Barrowman. I feel like we should have a number. It just shows you how many people are now. How many different avenues are out there for football.
I think over the last 5-10 years that's changed a lot, because I think when you were coming to the end, everybody's first steps would be coach, management, go down that route, but it's so volatile. And I think as football's grown, probably more down south, and it comes up here eventually, people are seeing the future when they've had a career down south, they see what might be coming, and it kind of goes that way. But it's definitely, there's so many more avenues.
You ever be tempted by something like that? I hate to admit it, I'll grudgingly admit it once, but you're quite sensible, I think. Sort of.
No, listen, it's definitely, like Nate's saying, there's an avenue that you do look at, and people like Keith doing it probably allows for a pathway that you think I could potentially follow in that. I am interested in the business side of football, definitely, as well. Rather be the one sacking people maybe than getting sacked. That probably brings a lot into it. But yeah, listen, it's one of those things. I think I would end up missing being on the grass. And Naze, I don't know how long you've been out of Hearts now, but I'm getting to around that year mark, and I do kind of miss, being out there and, being out there with the boys and putting on coaching sessions, etc., etc. But yeah, there's a lot of different roles within football that I think can probably allow me to feed that hunger I do have for getting back into the game. So you never say never, but yeah, at this moment in time, it's probably more on the grass.
See the relationships and the kind of that transition we're talking about. You're one of the best examples of what that change can be like, because you were Stephen Robinson's assistant at Motherwell, and should the day come where you need to pick up the phone and say, "We've had enough." Yeah. What on a serious note, because luckily for us all, that is a joke, because there's flying at the moment, but how is that?
I don't know. It just feels normal. It's strange. I've been asked that a few times, obviously for obvious reasons. It's a kind of quirky, sort of strange situation. But I don't know. I mean, I think between the two of us, I think we've got, because we worked together closely for like 5 years. It was a long time, and you build a relationship up. So I think we've got enough respect for each other. And we don't really. If somebody was coming into his ever relationship, they wouldn't really know that I used to be his assistant. If that makes sense, you don't know there's any. What I would say is that we have a good relationship, a working relationship. I know his character. I think he knows mine. I know when he maybe needs 5 minutes, which just happens a lot. But and I maybe know when maybe go and broach a subject, whatever that may be. So I think it's helped. It's helped. And it. He maybe makes me the odd cup of tea rather than me making him a cup of tea, and smaller things like that. But no, listen, on a serious note, he's been fantastic. It was fantastic to work with as an assistant in terms of, in that different relationship. But for St Mirren, our timelines, I came in just after him, actually. He came in just before me. But in that 3 years, pretty much, I think he's, the impact that I've seen up close has been on St Mirren and on the football club has been unbelievable, to be honest with you. I mean, for us to be in the mix again for the top 6 3 years in a row, European football, and just in general, the standard of the club and everything around the football club, I think has been driven forward, and that in part and big part is due to Stephen Robinson. So yeah, it has its moment, the relationship still, but no, I think overall the respect is there regardless of.
Do you miss the grass?
Yeah, I do actually. I do. I mean, we our setup is we have the stadium where I'm predominantly based, and then we have our training centre down at Ralston. And it's when you go down there, sometimes go down and just lovingly look at the grass,
the copas.
Aye, cones and Americans and all that, and see, go back into my office. And
on your title, so you're COO. What's the difference between a COO and a CEO?
Good to have wondered this.
Not very much, to be honest with you. I mean, I think different clubs just have their own structures and titles. The way it works at St Mirren is we have a board of directors and then me, really, and and every the operation, whether that be in the football side, academy side, or operational side, sponsor, stadium, everything kind of rolls under that. So while I don't sit on the board, so I don't have a board vote per se, so in that sense, I'm the kind of leading executive, if you like, that reports to the board, and just anything that happens operationally essentially is under me. So I think sometimes with names and roles, sometimes it's really less important to actually what the role was doing and what you're actually doing. And I think some of these roles can be pretty similar in terms of the workload and what we're actually doing. So not a lot of difference is the honest answer.
How do the pressures compare?
They're just different. They're different. I think that sort of, when you're on the grass, there's that gradual build up to the Saturday, whereas my role now, it feels a lot more probably every day's pressurised, but there's no that natural build up to a game and then down and that sort of thing. I think because I'm looking at the thing holistically every day, you get, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still go to the games, but my feeling of watching a game is different from before, in the sense you were in it. You were in it and you felt the, a tactical change or the ebb and flow of a game. You lived it, live and breathe it, don't you? Every single second, really. And you've been invested in that specific. You may have been working something specifically tactically during the week, and you're invested in it so much like that. Whereas I watch now from the stand, obviously, and while you're still invested whether you win or lose, obviously, you're not quite in the game as much. In that moment as much.
Just eating your prawn sandwiches up
Eating your prawn sandwiges and enjoying it.
He's running about celebrating a new commercial deal.
Exactly.
It feels different from scoring a goal.
But the thing about it, particularly at this time of the year, and I don't, maybe going to speak about that in terms of the split again, but at this time of the year, my mind wanders to budgets and the consequences of finishing top 6, bottom 6, and everything in between, these sort of thing. So it's just a different mindset. Pressure's still there. Your pressure's just in different places at different times, probably.
You've probably had some tough decisions though along that. I mean, it's largely been a good period for St Mirren, which you've acknowledged. One of the ones that I think the club gets a lot of credit for, albeit it causes a lot of debate, depending on what lens you look through, is cutting away allocations for when Celtic and Rangers come. Talk us a bit about what that looks like, if it's been a success and so on, because people are always interested in that, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean that was a decision the club took. I wasn't long in the building, to be honest. It was probably one of the first big decisions that we took, and the motivation for that really was we wanted to try and build our own support, essentially, and build our own home support. And again, we're a fan-owned club. We actively asked our fans their thoughts on it. I think we made it clear how much the short-term hit would be, and from a financial sense, because we obviously, for the Old Firm games, we gave them behind both goals. Now we only give them behind one goal. But there's an identity piece here as well. The identity for what I felt was important, my sort of input into it is we need to start to build our own home. I felt as if it was almost like when the Rangers and Celtic came, they took over our stadium. To me, it's our stadium, and as I said, we want that environment for our own fans to go and feel, comfortable, enthused, and again, it's not just about those games for us; it's about all the games. And I think if you look at our, home support and our stadium data, actually the Rangers and Celtic games, our attendance against Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, across the board really, have went up, and we knew we had to do that. It's a bit of a gamble in a sense, because financially you need to make that up. But we feel as if we are on the road to doing that. Not on the road to doing that. I think our season ticket sales and our sales have shown that we have achieved that, but we need to continue to do that. But again, the motivation for it is just to essentially build our own home support, and really that's our family stand as well. And again, we don't want to be building a reputation for fan engagement and community engagement, and really building our young supporter base to 4 games a year, or how many games a year, say, by the way, can you move from there over to there just so we can make a few quid? And that, in theory, and it's hard. I'm throwing that a flippant comment. That's a big, it's a big consideration for a club, that in terms of every penny's a prisoner, absolutely. But fundamentally, its core, that's the reason why we made that decision. And I think today it's been a positive thing for the club, and hopefully we can continue to build on that.
It's a great example, that, isn't it? Because going back to what we're talking about, the league, it is inevitable people look at things through their own lens, and that's fine. You know, it's not a crime. And I'm sure if Celtic or Rangers fans, and you see it all the time, they'll turn on the TV and go, look at that empty seat. We could have had that, but here we've got a real example.
That's
of
exactly
why it's done and how it works.
It's the fan experience of the day, as you say. You're not disrupting it. But how long that young person that's coming to the game, they could be a fan for the next 50, 60 years. That's what you're building. And I think it's become more common. I think more now than ever have I seen Scottish games where the allocations have been put second to what the home fans base is wanting.
It's hard though, isn't it? Because when I was at Livingston, Rangers and Celtic used to come. It used to be like an away game. They used to get like literally three sides of it. But the club couldn't afford to not do that in those games. And without being respectful to Livingston, the fan base isn't nearly big enough. St Mirren have done a brilliant thing there, and Keith's right, because you are going to lose money at the start, and then hopefully you gain that over the years. Like you're saying, Naze, you get fans for the duration of their life, but Livingston, you're not really going to get that, where it was always, you come out and it was just full of like, whether it's green and white or Rangers blue or whatever it might be, and you felt you're playing an away game and they're right on top of you. But being at Hibs, it was the opposite. Because Hibs would set out the three sides, and then Rangers or Celtic would get behind one of the goals, and the atmosphere is fantastic. So I understand both sides of it, but like you're saying, financially, it seems like Livingston just couldn't afford to do something like that.
Just to add more pressure to him, see if we can add some more greys before the end of the show. So what you couldn't be closer to in that balance of might make top six, might not. What does that feel like? Because I don't know, what do you budget for? Where does then expectation come in? Because Mirren have done it in the last two seasons. What's a success? Is it as simple as like bottom six is not a success? How do you look at it?
No, I don't think so. You've got to remember, I think again, you set your own expectation, and managing those expectations is probably a big hard thing for us, given how successful the last couple of seasons have been. But I think I heard Derek McInnes, I think, speaking about this. The reality is that, you take Rangers and Celtic aside, but, if Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, they do their jobs essentially and maximise their own budgets and capabilities, to be honest, that should be 5-year top six away straight away. That is the reality of it, given how far their resources are, even ahead of our own, are, then I think that should be the case. But what we need to do, and I think what we've shown is maximising our own budget, maximising getting whatever that budget may be, and timesing that by 2 or 3 by the people you have in the building, and player identification, coaching, player development through your own academy, all of these things. We need to try, and that's how we try and fill the gap and take advantage of these clubs that maybe don't have, don't maximise their resource, and I think that's what we've managed to do over the last 2 or 3 years. And that at the end of the day, that comes down to people. We need to get the right people in our club, because we only have a finite amount of money to do that, and we need to maximise the people within our structure to make sure that they are then in turn getting the most out of our budget. And that, in a nutshell, is pretty much what we need to try and continue to do.
How difficult is managing outside expectation? Because since the manager came in, the curve has been on the up. The European, even the quality of performance in Europe, how hard is that then? Because that just becomes norm. When, like you said, 5 out of the 6 top 6 spaces should be taken up. Yeah. How difficult is that for you?
You might even add Dundee United into that.
Potentially.
And it becomes a 6.
But how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's funny, because I'm saying it almost like, we want to raise the profile of the football club. It's part of my job to do that. And we are, even to have St Mirren and talking about Europe again, it's like, 38 years, nearly 40 years since the club was there. So you kind of want it, but you need to manage it, and that's it, because I want to grow the club that, sponsors want to be involved with it, or people want to connect to it, because you are a club that's capable of European competition and being in the top 6, but you almost need to tell that story of how hard it is to achieve.
Because it is really hard.
And you're trying to juggle those two things at the same time. And again, particularly, again, back to Motherwell as well, the fan owner, being a fan owned club, it is, you need to absolutely maximise everything that you've got, because in terms of somebody, you don't have somebody, right? I don't have somebody writing me a check and saying, right, okay, go and spend this and that, whatever. And that's why I go back to it. what money you do have, you just need to try and, in those key positions, if you like, those key line management positions across the board, you just need to try and get as good a people as you can to become greater than the sum of your parts, essentially.
You've come out as the biggest supporter of the status quo so far in Scottish football, I've noticed over the last week. You like the split.
Yeah.
You think it's exciting. He's been at Hearts, so he knows the pressures. He really is involved at the moment. You can sit back and predict it. What do you think this?
Oh, this is this is good.
I think it will stay the way it is at this moment in time.
He'll kick you under that desk.
Yeah, he's already tried. No, I do. I do. I think Hearts will get the 6th place. I think they'll go on to win their next 2 games, and ultimately that will keep them in there. It doesn't really matter then what St Mirren. I know Dundee United have got that kind of 7 goals are you behind them, but 6 points, 7 goals.
8, I think.
So I expect them to pick up a point as well. But I know they play Hearts at the weekend. I expect Hearts to win both of their games, if I'm honest.
Sammy's killed it then.
I disagree with that.
Just got the
I do have to say, like, I'm not just saying it's because you're here. I said to Kurza when we were away that what St Mirren do, I think, is absolutely fantastic. And like you say, constantly punching above their weight. I enjoy the style of football, and I'm not trying to get your manager to go to another club, by the way. But I do find it surprising that he's not linked to bigger jobs, because I think he has done a wonderful job, like saying about the budget and getting the most out of people. To do that as a manager, and you know this, Nazy, that's not an easy thing to do. And sometimes as supporters, we can be there and we just expect it, like you're saying, this is the norm. When, St Mirren to finish in 10th place, it wouldn't be, an unbelievable thing to think of. And I'm not saying this, but I don't imagine a club would be putting massive pressure on him, because it's one of those things that's quite realistic to happen, because the teams are so tight in that
the margins are so tight.
Yeah.
I think more than ever, the organisation of a team is so high, and everybody's really switched on to that part without the ball, that games are so tight, and it's the small margins that make the big difference. And as you talk about there, maximising the amount of money you spend on what quality you have is key.
And having good people, they're good players, good mentalities. You speak to Kurza about it, so they're good lads. They always give you everything. Listen, sometimes you won't win games because other teams have more quality than you, but in terms of what the players give you application-wise, that's all you can ask for, because, some players at bigger clubs won't give you that.
How pleasing has it been to have that, successful recruitment where players come in and make an impact? I think the manager's obviously got a good track record of it. He's almost, I remember joking with him before that he's on the verge of completing the job of like that mid-sized Premiership club. Like, he's now done it twice. Like, that's no accident. Like, regenerated his Motherwell team a couple of times, now regenerated the St Mirren team. Take like Olasanya as an example. Is there a lot of interest in him? What are you able to divulge?
Yeah, I don't know for certain exactly what clubs or how much interest, but there is, in general terms, there is interest in Toy. Listen, in terms of the manager speaking about his development, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was all down to his assistant manager at Motherwell, right enough. But,
you did recruitment. I
done everything.
The lights, the recruitment.
Still be paid for that. Right? No, but seriously, it has. I agree. The job, because I would say probably 2.5 teams at Motherwell. There almost was a couple of rebuilds even within that period at Motherwell. And then it's the same. It's similar in a sense. We won't, using Toyosi as an example, the job of at a club of our sort of where we sit, if you like, there's always going to be players that come out of contract, essentially because for whatever reason, maybe another club can offer them more money, and we need to live with that. We almost like to, we still hold hope that maybe like Lasagna and Richard Taylor, some of the guys that are out of contract, and we have spoken to, the likelihood is that they probably will move on, but that's almost part of being a St Mirren manager, a part of being a Motherwell manager, that you almost, it's hard to take because you keep strive and you've got top 6, we need to kick on it, keep the best players. You inevitably 1 or 2 are going to move on. It's just it's just the nature of where we are, as I say. But that's where the skill set comes in, right? How and where, and how, when do you replenish that, and what comes in the other side. And I think the manager, along with Martin Foyle, our head of recruitment, and along with the structure that we've tried to put in place at the club, is try to give the manager the best opportunity to do that, essentially.
I think obviously with this, the beauty from the outside, the pressures have been in because of that playoff spot now, and you've been involved maybe trying to come up the way you were then on coaching staff at Livy, where that would you actually ended up punching above your weight. But What's your
until I
memories?
retired.
What your memories have been involved in the playoffs?
The playoffs, obviously, when we were at Hibs, the 2015-16 season, we got knocked out by Falkirk. But it's one of those things, we were kind of head and head with Rangers until probably the last 5 or 6 games, and then they just blew us away. But I can say it now, we were quite confident about going through the playoffs. We always thought, right, we'll get to the final regardless. We'll definitely get to the final. And then when we got knocked out by Falkirk, all of a sudden we were like, wow, we're in big trouble here, because we had the Scottish Cup final against Rangers. Obviously, we went on to win that, so it kind of saved our season. But outside of that,
you never mentioned that before.
That would have been a real disappointing season for us. So, I enjoyed that side of it. And then coming into the Premier League at Livingston, and, David said to me, it's about finishing in 10th place. But, secretly inside the dressing room, as players, we had a really good group. And we were like, no, we can finish higher than that, 100%. We can. Did we expect to get into the top 6 twice? No. But, we managed to do it. And for us, it was a massive feather in our caps as players, because a lot of us have just, boys have kind of been written off. I was coming towards the end at Hibs. I'd been taken to Livingston, and people were unsure whether could I still play. So for me, we had different things that were kind of energising us to go on and achieve, and we managed to do that as a team. And then, when I was assistant manager, we finished just outside of it. And, Motherwell, unfortunately, I think we're 2-0 up against you guys, weren't we? And then you came back to draw.
And were you in the opposite dugout?
No, I was still. Yeah, I was. Sorry, right. I was still coaching at Motherwell. That was I think it was my last season there.
Yeah.
And it was Ricky Lamy. I want to say last minute. Yeah, that's right.
The smug smile in your face. You were talking about that. A wee wry smile came across the face.
He brought it up. 2022. On a serious note, I'll try and be serious. Right. I'm sorry. It was really funny, Marvin. Genuinely, that, because we spoke about league reconstruction, that's the split in a nutshell, isn't it? No one's pretending it's perfect. No one's pretending it's without its flaws. But you've got, with one head of the ball, someone's season is made, another season's broken. That we should really try and celebrate that, shouldn't we? Of what the drama that it can bring.
And then Motherwell obviously ultimately qualified for Conference League, I think, at the end of that as well. So it gave,
that's enough.
I know, rub it in there, but that you make that initial step right, top 6, and then it just gives you that opportunity then to chase for that European spot. But yeah, I mean, I've had that experience as well in terms of being in the flip side of that, and at 2-0 down, you think, oh no, the world's end, and then by the end of it, you have, again, that elation at the end. So, and then, the playoff at the bottom, and some experience of that.
Talk about that as well.
Don't know if that's in the list,
Let's
to talk about, but again, I look at that, and when I think back to that, it's like cold sweats. That was the worst week of my career.
Was it?
Absolutely. Worst week of my playing career by a stretch. And that was particularly after the first game. And you remember, we go to Ibrox and we win 3-1. And actually that 2-3 days, I think it's Thursday, Sunday, as it goes.
It was then, yeah.
It's changed now, yeah.
And I think it was because we had a lead, and it was almost a bit like, right, all we can do here is mess this up, right? If I want a bit, I was going to use a different word.
You could have. We allow like one or two a show.
Right, okay. But it was the nervousness, and again, I think because I'd been at the club for so long, I knew what the consequence was.
Do you feel a bit of responsibility as
absolutely,
captain?
Absolutely. And there was 2 or 3 of us there, myself, Stevie Hamill, Piero was there, Big Mick, Steve McMahon, Scott McDonald. We had a really experienced, and good dressing. We almost went, wow, how are we in this playoff? We had a good side and experienced side. But for some reason, we waited till we got to Ibrox in that playoff game to kind of put it together and play well. But that 3-4 day period, or 3 day period, whatever it was honestly, I was going home and I was just sitting there, just thinking about the game every single day. It was horrible, absolutely horrible.
The players you name there have played under similar pressures in different situations. But that pressure is the thing that builds a lot of the players. If you didn't have the split, by March time, a lot of the games are insignificant and they're just playing. But that tension and pressure, what it can do to players, it makes or breaks players at all levels. So
and
that's
fans,
what it brings.
by the way. See, if you come out the right side of that, there's nothing better. They go on their holidays.
It's like winning a trophy.
Of course it is.
Can I remember that running as well? I can't the specifics, but it felt like you actually did get a couple of decent results at times. Is that right? But then you're playing all the teams round about you, so that's where the real jeopardy comes in. And sometimes it's not enough. and slipping in there.
Yeah.
Why did you not do more to stick up for Lee Erwin when Bilel Mohsni punched him in the
You were in the
face?
back getting the jackets in. Get a sub jackets in.
I was sleeping at the way. I missed a couple of right and left hooks there. But,
Surely we've got the footage of that.
no. See these.
Yeah,
Oh,
good.
right,
Look,
okay.
Keith's just going in the tunnel there.
That's me in the deck. That is in the right hand side there.
Wow. I like that's like raw fan footage as well.
It's
that
the
as
still.
well.
I don't know. You see the still of that
In the face,
Lee
it's
Erwin's
like,
jaw, sort of.
So where are you as far away as possible?
I'm way off camera to the right hand side there.
He went down with cramp.
No, do you know what he's doing? He's pretending he's been nervous all week. He's got the mic. He's milking it and singing in front
Well,
of
that did come after there,
singing
unfortunately.
in front of the fans.
But I remember, again, another kind of small thing that always sticks in my mind. You know, you always get the point, maybe late in a game, you're 1-0 up or whatever, you're looking at the clock, you know, oh, it must be a few. I remember looking at the clock in that game at 11 minutes, right? And it always etches in my mind because I get into the game and I thought, oh, it must be a bit, I don't know, it must be nearly half time. And I looked up at the scoreboard for 11 minutes. I'll never forget it. I thought, oh, so again, but whoever I was chasing at that point, but it was just wee funny things sticking in your mind, and it was because of the nerves, so just wishing the game away, you know, just wish, oh, let's get out of here with a result and, you know, get out of the way. So
that Mohsni moment must have been one of those mental things you have ever been involved in, though.
It was. I was watching from a distance. Obviously, I was going on over there, but and he ended up in the bus. He tried to get on the. Oh no, he came off the bus. So we were walking down to the car park after it, and he came running off the bus and all that. Tried to go again outside and all that. It was mental. But as I say, luckily I kind of stayed out the way. But it was a bit. You could sense the tension though. You know, I think from towards the end of the game, I think there was a few tackles going in. You know how it is. I think Rangers maybe knew the game was gone, and you know, maybe some people maybe getting a bit frustrated, understandably, and it got to the final whistle and it was almost just ready to go, and then obviously, as you see, it did.
And see, when you're sitting back in the change room, I guarantee you the biggest thing you had was relief.
Oh, aye.
And it is no joy.
But
the relief.
But it wasn't. It's that you know, thing of the staff and you know, the people that you build a relationship with behind the scenes, that you know they're just part of the furniture, and you know that they might be at risk, or they might have been at risk if that had happened. So and it was really, honestly, I was knackered. I went home. We had I wouldn't class it as a party, to be honest with you. The classes, maybe a few of us got together in one of the wee centenary suites and just thought, we'll have a few beers. And I remember just sitting there like tie like that, just sitting. And it wasn't being like drunk in it. It was just, I was absolutely just gone. And I just went home, and I think a few of the boys were going out and all that. And I was like, I'm just going to get him and lie down in a dark room sort of thing, you know. It was
the house must have been raging.
I know, aye.
There are the highs and lows though that
Draining.
either drive you back,
Aye.
or you maybe go in a different route and you think that's no for me type thing.
It must have been so weird because Stuart McCall, who they've had success together, he's in the opposite dugout at
True.
Rangers at the time. So
Very true, and him and Kenny Black.
anyway, even I'll draw a line under those memories for now, because what you don't realise is you think choosing the future size of our league is important. It's not as important as picking goal of the month. That is the responsibility that comes with. You've been on this show before. Have you ever had to pick goal of the month?
Nah, I don't think I have.
Seriously, big decisions to be made. Turn off your social media notifications if you get this wrong. Let's take a look at the shortlist for goal of the month and see what we can come up with. Oh, but Marvin banned from voting in this, surely. Doing it in a big occasion, obviously. Jack Iredale, Edinburgh Derby, with a blistering start to the game as well.
Actually, the
defender
comes on this game.
Go on then.
That's one. I don't want to see the rest. That's
I think that's it
we're
already.
done. Yeah, that's
decent.
Did you not do Hibs TV commentary and you were screaming like...
I actually was. I lost my voice.
It was quite embarrassing, actually. But
But I remember saying at this point, hit it, and then he did, and I just started screaming.
Stephen,
Absolutely
even with
buzzing.
your heart's meanings, you...
Nazy's crying. You're right.
See
Gotta
the best
accept
thing
that.
about it is the first touch for me. Brilliant first touch, and then when it sits up like that, your eyes light up and you either put it in the far corner or rose edge.
That's how you know you're an attacker. I'd have been looking for a pass.
I was going to say, what are you looking at me to for
Because
scoring
I'm
goals?
thinking that's the rose edge side. This is the side that goes in the top corner.
While we're at it, big moments and big derbies. Doesn't come much more dramatic than this.
That's some finish.
What are you thinking?
That is.
I'm probably still erring to I might be controversial here, but I think that might be an easier strike in the sense that he's sliced. It's almost like
That you cut across it.
cut across it, whereas
Gets
Iredale's maybe a bit more measured.
Gets
Maybe.
a little break.
He's an
As
attacker
somebody
as well.
that scored about 3 goals my whole career, I'm not
You
sure
might
I'm
like this.
qualified.
A number 6.
I mean, even I grudgingly would admit, because has this not got a bit of both? It's got a bit of the team kind of build up, and it's got the finish.
Yeah.
Also, this one looks simple, right? But that's down to Leighton Clarkson. That's hard to do.
Keeper needs to move his feet though, Naisy. His keeper's not moved his feet.
Blaming the keeper
mate.
for that.
He's
not moved
went
his
through
feet,
5
mate.
bodies.
You're joking.
Right in the corner.
Nah,
side
that's a
netting.
great finish. That is a great finish.
But it's up to you guys. You have got
was
the
it us?
choice.
You
Yeah.
just-
You
just
two
us
could,
two.
well, it depends. We can have the.
What do you mean? It
decisive-
depends on.
Well, we might need the
You don't
deciding
agree?
vote.
I'm personally, I'll go first. I think Iredale, just with being a defender, like Naisy said, great first touch, magnitude of the game, fantastic finish, and the fact I lost my voice from commentating on it, I'm
I
going
mean, it's
with
not
that.
about you though.
No,
If
but
you
I
just
bet
bear
it
that in
definitely
mind.
is. I'm going with that.
I know I'm going to stick with that as well. I'm going to stick with that. I think as you say, first touch, it's not a bad goalkeeper. He's getting it past as well, to be fair, at full stretch. And I think he's meant to put it there, and I think that's a deliberate strike into a far corner. So I'm going to stick with it.
Will we accept the decision?
I think so. I think any of the choices, to be fair, they were all really good goals.
What would
so.
you have gone for?
Leighton Clarkson, probably.
Really?
Uh-huh.
You ever seen the goal he was involved in at Pittodrie? To
Oh, aye.
clinch Motherwell's second place.
Aye.
John Sutton commits GBH on Jamie Langfield. And the
can't
ref,
remember
the ref doesn't give it. And then about 5 of them try and scramble it in from half a yard. And it eventually goes in and they clinch second. And again, he's got the mic, he's got the scarf round the head. He
How much
Champions
excitement
League.
does he have talking about Motherwell?
That's what I'm saying. You think I like you due to our new relationship. You think I like you due to our previous. Nothing compared to this guy.
The glow here, man.
built up to this
There's
moment.
Motherwell top underneath that, man. Motherwell best.
Been building up to this moment for a long time.
The warm-up brought to you by William Hill, proper supporter of Scottish football.
Anyway, should we move on? Keep it
Yeah,
professional.
keep it professional.
Good fixture list coming up. Let's take a look. Well, Keith, go on then. You're talking about the kind of pressures, if you like, of trying to get top 6 and all the rest of it. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, good. I mean, particularly after last week's result for ourselves against Kilmarnock, I think not just the result, but the performance, I think, that got us there in pretty poor conditions. But I think our performances, to be honest, the last few weeks, I think we probably, most clubs probably say this, but probably deserved a bit more in points terms. I think the performances last few weeks have been consistent. So no, go there with confidence. I think Dundee front three look very dangerous. Look as if they can score goals. They've obviously been conceding as well. It's maybe both teams to scores the bet there, but hopefully we can come out on top of that.
What do you expect from Dundee? I mean, so
I agree.
many highs
I
and
think
lows.
I think the last 2 games they've looked more really attacking. They had a wee dip of that.
Is Simon Murray
defensively?
going to be fit, though?
Well, that's it. He was the biggest
how big a blow
concern.
would that be?
Massive
Goodness,
blow.
trying to get out of that playoff spot.
Massive blow. His experience, his intelligence in the game now. I've spoke previously about how I think he's got grown as he's got older. He's matured really well. But the biggest fear for them, I think, is the goals they're conceding. They're conceding the most in the league. It's all types of goals. It's not as if that's the concern for them. So, but it will be a tough game.
To Tony Docherty's pal, Derek McInnes, how concerned should he be? Marvin, you look at that, we'll leave Keith off Motherwell, he's done enough. But, I mean, they must be starting to be a bit concerned.
Yeah, I think Derek will be very concerned. I've watched actually a few of their games and he's tried to change shape and he's tried to change personnel. It's just not going for them. They seem really far away from a Derek McInnes team in terms of they're normally really well structured. They're kind of hard work and they make it difficult for the opposition. They've just failed to do that this season. And it's amazing to think they were in the qualifiers for Europe at the start of this season. Now they find themselves in a position where they're looking over their shoulders at where Dundee are.
It's almost like they just literally never recovered from that.
They
isn't
haven't.
It? Like the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
2 big injuries as well, Vassell and Finlay.
Yeah,
That's
Finlay
played a
back,
part.
but you're right, over the piece.
That period they've
Yeah.
been out. And
Fearing
home
for your old
forms though, I think the last few performances are concerning.
Mm-hmm.
What's massive for them is home form. From now to the summer, is home form's important.
Go on then, Mr. Hibbs. What are you saying about a trip to Ibrox? Because again, Rangers last week, it looked like they were heading for defeat, and then in many ways it would have been all back to square one for Barry Ferguson, but dig it out, and then all of a sudden it's about the character and this, all this narrative that keeps going on. So what do you think of that one?
I'll take a point now for Hibs 100%.
Seriously?
Yeah, I would take a point. I still think going to Ibrox is a difficult task. I know we've seen Motherwell go there recently and beat them, and we're talking about the goals they've conceded, but at some point, I know it's getting late on in the season, you expect them to get it right. I think it's two teams that will play the same formation as well, so you're up directly against an opponent. And I think man for man, I don't think man for man Rangers are better than Hibs when you look across the board. I just think it's a difficult fixture. Listen, Hibs have been on a fantastic run, and
15 league games unbeaten.
Exactly. So if we can go to 16 league games unbeaten with a draw, I'll take that all day long right now, because as I said, I think it's a real difficult fixture.
Okay, well, we saw obviously Aberdeen securing that top 6 last week. Ross County not too far below the likes of Keith St Mirren and so on. St Johnstone Celtic, this was the weekend. It was the first weekend that people thought Celtic could have won the league. It was the first one that gets circled in the diaries, and then Rangers beat them obviously and so on. See when you're Simo Valakari, it's all right saying you believe and try. How do you think you get your players to believe that they can do something there and get off?
I think last week the biggest problem was they went back to defending like they had done at the start. Like there was a period there where their defence was solid, really good, and they carried a threat. They still carry a threat. Well, up at the weekend they had one shot and it came in the 9th minute or something. But the goals they concede, they've got the ball in possession and they lose it, and they're deep third twice, I think, for 3 of the goals. That's a massive problem, but nobody's expecting them to beat Celtic, so I think it'll be a tough weekend for them.
I'm not expecting them to beat anyone anymore. Honestly, I'm not. Just what Naisy saying there, like they're trying to play from the back, and I understand it, but they're giving away the ball on so many occasions. Hibs robbed them maybe 4 or 5 times and should have scored more goals from, like saying St Johnstone having the ball in a comfortable area and playing it into a real dangerous area with one pass and it getting turned over. So now teams are just setting up ready to rob them.
And what might be a problem is they might get into the bottom 6 and be that far detached.
Yeah.
The games that are irrelevant, there's no pressure laying on them.
Need to stay.
They need to stay close.
Don't you? Keith and Stephen Robinson are actually in the Dundee United end at Tynecastle on Sunday, hoping for an away.
Face paint a lot.
An away winning that one. Hearts in 6th at the moment. You know more than anyone how important is it they stay there.
That's massively important. I think the expectation that top 6 is a minimum requirement, I think. So the next 2 are going to be big, and I think because of that expectation comes the pressure. There's going to be big pressure in these 2 games before the split, that they're going to need to pick up the points.
Because then it could be set for that last day showdown then, Motherwell and Hearts afterwards. So a few teams involved. Looking forward to it. What about the Championship? Let's take a look, because during the week some very, very interesting results. We were all talking about Neil Lennon and Victor Wanyama. Then there was the sending off, and they lost against Scott Brown's Ayr of all teams, but they have a win on the board, Dunfermline Marvin, and now a home game against another team right next to them in the league. That is huge, isn't it?
That's a massive game. I think when Neil Lennon went into it, I think he kind of wrote the first 2 off. As a manager, you would never want to actually say that, but playing Ayr away, home to Livingston, you expected to be chasing Falkirk, so he'd be delighted to get 3 points out of those 2 games. But this is the one that they definitely have to win. If they do that, it puts Hamilton in massive bother. They'll then be chasing Dunfermline. I think it'll be 4 or 5 points at the points difference as well. So yeah, this is a huge game for them, and listen, they'll be absolutely delighted after yesterday.
How big a blow is that for your former team, Livingston?
It's done. The league's done for me. It
was done anyway.
Yeah, I felt it was done anyway, even if they beat.
But then it's a big blow in your race to finish second. Then surely.
Well, that's the important thing now, isn't it? That they need to make sure they do finish in second. They're in 3rd place now, just level points with United, but obviously they've got a worse goal difference. But yeah, that's the most important thing, that they finish in second. But Queen's Park have been struggling over these last 2 games, conceded 10 goals, and Livingston put 5 past them on Sunday. They conceded another 5 against Airdrie yesterday, so Liverpool will be confident going into that, and even if Ayr United are to beat Rafe, I think they'll be looking to minimise that kind of goal difference.
The crazy thing about Queen's Park is this is a season punctuated with that win against Rangers, the best result in the club's history. They're now in an absolute spin, losing 5-0 to the team that's bottom of the league. In Airdrie, who, as we can see, they host Partick Thistle, so all of a sudden they're within touching distance. It's always a mad division, but I feel like in the last couple of weeks this has just really kicked up.
I say it all the time, it's the hardest league in Scotland, I think. But for Queen's Park, it's worrying times. They can get dragged right in, depending on results. They can get sucked right in. So they need to stop the bleeding. Like Marv said, 10 goals in a week is not a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, so it's brilliant, Keith, isn't it? And then that's why the clubs of your size, you want to avoid that every season. Don't get dragged, because you look at some of the clubs there, they are big clubs, and just how hard it is to come back.
Absolutely. Some, even Falkirk, who were recently League One, and obviously done a fantastic job to get themselves right in the mix at the top of the Championship now. So No, I mean, I think right back to the start of our conversation about league expansion, I think there's certainly clubs in there that would complement the top division. And as the guys were saying there, I think Falkirk look pretty set to me to win. And as always, every year, those players are going to be very interesting just to see. Because I think, is it Partick are in the fourth position at the moment, and you just never know. Once you get there, seen it, I think probably if you looked at it, you think, it'll be between Livy or Ayr. Is that next team? But Partick, I think that is not out with the realms of possibility. Partick put a decent run together as well going into those playoffs.
I don't think the team in the playoffs that finishes in the playoff in the Championship will come up though. I think the gap will be too big to whether it's Dundee or Kilmarnock. I don't think they'll be able to do it, and that'd be the disappointing thing. Because I think this is the most open championship we've had in terms of not been a real massive hitter at the top of it budget wise. I think they're all very close, those top 4 teams. So yeah, it'd be disappointing for those teams finishing in the playoffs.
Let's take a look at League One as well, because we're probably at that stage of the season. You're looking at which division is going to be won first. I think obviously Celtic looked like they were very much in the driving seat, but Arbroath heading to Montrose, only 3 wins away from the title in that one as well. So I don't suppose it matters much if you're the first in the country, but it's a nice little.
Then you can start thinking of your summer holidays as a player.
Well, we're keeping a keen eye on that. We've got a couple of young players in loan there, young Callum Penman and young Fraser Taylor, who's had a real good impact there. So. We'll be keeping a.
It's been a really good loan for.
Great, and as always, you guys know, I really like that they're involved in a title race as well. That pressure and playing under a bit of pressure and going on to win something. Because I think for me, that's that last bit of player development is all about that, isn't it? It's got that technical base, if you like, and physically whatever. Can they play under pressure? Can they go and win something? Can they go and deliver that? So as I say, keeping a close eye on that one.
Just looking at their loans. Are they capable of going from League One to being in your squad for next season, or would it be like another step?
No, I mean we hope so. And to be honest, it's the model we are striving for. We want to get to a point where that 22 man squad is made up of 4 or 5, maybe those younger ones. Because again, going back to budgets, it then lets us maximise that budget. At that what you have got available to go and then spend. So. And you're trying to create assets essentially, as well, that you can come in and play. So yeah, it's all in the mix for us, Marvin. It's all what we're trying to do. And in terms of Callum, he has played against Queen of the South actually early in the season in the cup, and young Fraser, he actually played some minutes in the European games right at the start of the season, and he's had a couple of loans. So they are 2 that we think are capable of that.
For a lot of them, all they need's that wee initial jump in, and they get that confidence to come back and go, this isn't actually as big a jump as I think. And they kick on.
Let's take a look at League 2 as well. Obviously the business end of the season, as they call it, with good reason. Peterhead, Bonnyrigg Rose would be a standout, top against bottom there in that one as well. So big games up and down the country. Another fantastic weekend to look ahead to in the SPFL. You happy? You happy with
Delighted.
Your afternoon's work?
Love it.
Let you back out in the sunshine.
That's it, top up the time.
Sleeves. He's a man that's dressed.
Factor 50.
Dressed for the sun. Anyway, let's thank the 2 top guests. What an insight that is. Keith Lasley's gone from chasing you around, trying to kick you
unsuccessfully.
We were actually unofficial teammates for a short period. Keith came into Kilmarnock just before I left for a wee period.
A long time ago.
There you go.
I was back in the Sparky days. I was still
Making ends meet.
He didn't come in as a player. He's going to fix it.
I just turned up with a kit on one day and
He had his tools in the front and his copas in the back.
I thought he was more of a Joma man, to be honest. Anyway, right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to Marvin, Bartley and Keith Lasley. Thanks again to Stephen, as always, and thanks for watching. Make sure you continue to like and subscribe. We will see you soon on The Warm Up, brought to you by William Hill, a proper supporter of the SPFL.